Dream Vision 7 Radio Network welcomes Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes, heard every Monday at 11 a.m. and 11 p.m. Eastern Time. Using nearly 200 years of abundant and consistent afterlife evidence, quantum physics, consciousness research, and ancient writings, we seek to understand who and what we are, how reality works, the nature of God, and the meaning and purpose of our lives. Join Roberta weekly to better understand our one reality and gain insights into how we can make the most of the glorious eternal beings that we are.
Welcome to Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes. Joyous conversations about what the afterlife evidence and modern science combine to tell us is true about our one reality. You have nothing to fear. You are eternal and you are perfectly loved. Knowing the truth changes everything. Now, here's Roberta.
Oh, my dear friends, welcome to Seek Reality. As you know, I'm Roberta Grimes, and I'm delighted that you're with us today. Many of my Seek Reality friends know that, in my view, the most important expert in the whole field of seeking the truth about reality is Dr. R. Craig Hogan. Craig is almost certainly the most spiritually advanced being I have ever known who was in a body, and he is, without question, the most selfless person I have ever known. His whole life is devoted to helping you learn the truth about your own eternal nature, and with never the least thought for himself. And one of the things that has been most important to Craig has been finding ways that you can learn to communicate with your transitioned loved ones on your own. His method of teaching people to induce and experience their own afterlife communications is called self-guided afterlife connections. And I hear from people who do it. They say it has a very high rate of success, but you have to do the work. You have to basically teach yourself to do something new. If you're interested in doing it, go to afterlifeconnections.org/Craig, HTM, and then you can learn more about it. But because not many of us have kind of the moxie or the time or the determination to do the work of getting ready to communicate directly. He's also worked with therapists, too, who want to help people who are now deep in grief. And the most remarkable of these therapists is here with us for the third time. She hasn't been here with us, though, for, I think, 2 years. So we're so glad to have her back. Her name is Rochelle Wright, and she's a licensed mental health therapist and EMDR therapist. She's been a grief and trauma therapist for nearly 30 years, and she has developed what she calls the repair and reattachment grief therapy method, which is new to me, although I know where it comes from. I'm anxious to find out more about what it is she's doing now. In 2011, Rochelle wrote a wonderful pioneering book with Craig Hogan that was called Guided Afterlife Connections. Then in 2015 came Repair and Reattachment Grief Therapy, again written with Craig Hogan, and it's a later edition of her 2011 book. Welcome, Rochelle. I am thrilled that you're here.
Well, thank you very much, Roberta. I'm really glad to be here and glad to be talking to you. And I just absolutely second everything you said about Dr. Craig Hogan. He really is the most spiritual entity in a human body.
Yeah,
I really believe that.
Well, thank you for saying that. It's not just me. Everybody I know in this field says the same thing. Try to find somebody no one will ever say anything negative about and just go right to Craig and you've already found someone. It's amazing. But he has really supported your work. How did you get started with him?
Well, actually, he wrote to me in 2009, and he was asking different, I think, therapists, have they got things unusual, whatever, like that. And I was at the time getting quite a bit of unusual things in my office. And so I didn't answer him right away, but I finally answered him and told him, and he was very excited. And I can't quite remember, but I did get something very unusual, and I called him, if you can believe it, on Christmas Eve morning. I would never do that to anybody, but I was so excited. And Craig answered the phone.
Of course he did. He always does.
He was really excited. He said, okay, then we need to write a book right now. That's what he did. And it started. It started. So he was the writer, and I provided the content, and it was a very exciting time in that was 2009, 2010.
Yeah, the book
it's been a while ago.
Yes, but you say it contains 26 stories of real clients, and actually it's a fascinating book. If you want to read a book that's enjoyable just for the stories, this is a great one. 26 stories of real clients and their experiences in Rochelle's office in early 2010. And that's really when there was a lot of work going on the part of people who are not in bodies, to work through Craig and a few others to bring the fact of human survival to the attention of all of us. It's not a coincidence that I started writing The Fun of Dying in 2009 and didn't know till much later. I didn't think I was going to write a book, and I didn't realize till later that actually I didn't write a book. It was all channeled. But this is something which began right at that time, and Rochelle was there right at the start of it with what I consider to be the leader of, and not chosen by us, not chosen by him, chosen by Spirit, the leader of this movement to enlighten the world. So that's exciting. What is repair and reattachment grief therapy, which I can't even say in one sentence? Repair and reattachment grief therapy. There it is. What is that?
Okay, repair and reattachment grief therapy is something that licensed therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, social workers, marriage and family therapists do, and they have to be licensed in the state that they work in. And it's repair and reattachment. It's with grief. And so they come in and they're grieving about or wondering what happened to their deceased parent, their husband, their child. And so we sit with them. I sit with them for like 5.5 hours minimum. And in one day, we take care of it. I mean, that's hard to believe. But when they leave, it's very, very different than when they came in. Now, I do screen them well, so that is important. I screen people. But anyway, then the repair and reattachment, it used to be called Guided Afterlife Connections when Craig and I started. Well, what happened is about, I think now, time goes by so fast, it's about 3 years ago, I had this dream, and that's how a lot of this came to me, Roberta. I had dreams consistently of deceased people, and they were positive. They were all just made cameo appearances, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is exciting.
Wow. Yes.
Exciting, but it also, I went to work one day because only when I could talk to my secretary, because it's hard to talk to people about this.
Absolutely.
They wonder what is wrong with her.
Right.
So I went in and I said, Barbara, I can't have this happening anymore. It's ruining my day job. I'm always dreaming every night of these deceased people. And then what happened is it stopped. So I said to Craig later about it, and he goes, well, Rochelle, isn't it interesting how they listen to you? And they did. But what they did is they came through the back door in my therapy. Because, see, I wasn't doing it then when I was having these dreams and everything. So they thought, okay, we can't do it that way, so we're going to come through the back door in her therapy. So that's what they did.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
I hope everyone listen to what she's saying. She didn't choose to do this work. She was chosen by Spirit to do this work. Everybody I talk to who is genuinely doing work in this field, when they explain how they got started, it seems to be virtually always it was a call from Spirit, which you, I guess, couldn't ignore. I mean, you had Craig in one year and the dead in the other. How could you ignore it?
No, I couldn't. And it was so exciting. When I look back now, it was a whirl. It went so fast. And how did I do all that? I mean, it's just like amazing. Or how did we do all that?
Yes,
well, obviously it was Spirit-driven. But you had mentioned, it used to be called Guided Afterlife Connections. And then what happened, Roberta, is I had a dream one night, and my mentor, who is a nurse, an RN, and a psychologist, she's since retired for several years, but she was president for EMDRA International, which is EMDR. And she came to me in this dream, And I saw her walking toward me in the dream, and I thought, uh-oh, there's so-and-so. What does she think about what I'm doing? And I started actually backing up in the dream because I'm like, oh, my gosh, I wonder what she's going to say about this, because it's out of the box, right? It's very different than therapists do.
Right.
And she came and stood right in front of me, and I said, do you know what I am doing? And she said, yes, and it's called Repair and Attachment Grief Therapy. And I looked at her and I said, oh, it's called Repair and Reattachment Grief Therapy. And then that was it. That's the only time she came. And so I thought about it for a couple of weeks, and I told Craig, we have to change the name.
Okay.
And the reason is because it's more palatable, really, to the general public, which we want to have them know about this, and it's more palatable to therapists who want to be trained because it's just more in a mode of a therapy name. Does that make sense to you?
Totally. It makes total sense. We all have this problem, Rochelle, because both of the big, let's say, gatekeepers in our society, both Christianity and what we think of as science, are adamantly against any communication with people we used to think were dead. Now, since they're all alive and just fine, and since there's the two key gatekeepers are basically stonewalling the truth, people like you and me who are trying nevertheless to bring truth to the world have a problem. But let's start first more about what this is anyway. What is it that how would you describe the process of repair and reattachment grief therapy, and why is it called that? What are we repairing? What are we reattaching?
Well, we're repairing, actually the sadness and the loss of the person on this side. And we're repairing and then reattaching them in a healthy way so they can see, yes, that this person is not like they might even think they are, They've been in a car crash, they're grieving over that. And when they see it, during the last part, it's the last part of the day I do that, the afternoon, the processing, they see that it wasn't really anything like they thought it was.
Oh.
And and I just had someone this week, and it was amazing because it was a lot of trauma involved and a lot of sadness. And she actually saw her mother laughing when she couldn't even think of her mother possibly laughing, because of what happened to her.
Yes.
And, and her mother was on the other side. She was laughing, and her uncle, who she dearly loved, he came across and came and called her this pet name. So it does repair. It repairs how they're feeling on this side. They're thinking about it. They're feeling sad. They're grieving. They're, or it could be somebody, Roberta, that just wants to know what happened to this person. What happened.
Right.
And then and 98% of the ones that I do, the sessions I do, they do connect with the deceased loved one, and they get lots of messages from them, and it's very healing and heartwarming for them. They never expected it. So the thing is, it's very different, Roberta, what I do than mediums, because it's the exact opposite. It's like mediums, will tell someone what they're getting, and of course, that's very helpful. But I don't know what my client is getting.
Right.
They tell me what they're getting, and I write it down. So it actually comes to them. And one client, Gary, he said, they come as energy, and they come as a thought. He said he experienced, actually Gary was the one, he was a therapist for 4